The final thing that we're going to do is we're going to run a test in CI/CD with this script. So this is actually written in Python here, and let's go through it. First, we have a few imports. So the MySQL connector, which is going to help us run queries and connect to MySQL. We're going to import from MySQL connector error code. This is for some error handling and exceptions. And then we're going to import sys so we can pass in values at runtime. Going down to the main function here, we have a function called testDB, and we have a try except block here. The try on lines 8 through 13 are going to connect to MySQL with the user, password, host, and database we're passing in. Then we're going to use this cursor function to execute a query. So we're going to run select first name from users. Now remember, in the previous video, we created a new database, the users table, and then a user. So we're going to confirm that that all works as we expected. We're going to get the results and fetch all of them. We're going to have a for loop here that's going to query through the results and then print out that query. And then finally, we're going to close the connection to the database. And we have an except block here on line 25 that essentially says that if we're unable to connect to the database, we'll be told, hey, this is an access denied error. On line 31 through 34, that's where we're going to be passing in our arguments for the MySQL username, password, host, and database. And then on line 37 here, we're going to be running the testDB function, which is this function right here. And with that, let's go ahead and confirm that you take this code and it's committed to source control. And then let's head over to Azure DevOps. Actually, one more thing I'd like to show you before we head over there. So I'm going to close out of this a little bit so this makes it a little bit easier to read. And as you can see, I have this requirements.txt on the root of my repository. If I open that up, it's going to install MySQL, MySQL connector, and MySQL connector Python. So you're going to want this requirements.txt file in the root of your repository. That way, as you're going to see in the CI/CD pipeline, we're going to run a install on the requirements, and this is going to bring in all of the requirements into the virtual environment that are needed for this script. So I'm in Azure DevOps here, and I'm going to go to my pipelines. From here, I'm going to click New Pipeline. I'm going to go to GitHub. And then I'm going to choose the repository where my code exists, and that's going to be in the DevOps for Database repository. I'm going to do a starter pipeline here, and then I'm going to delete all of the steps right here, and I'm going to paste in a pipeline that I use to test this. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through this pipeline. We're going to have a trigger for main. The pool is going to be Ubuntu latest. We're going to have a matrix here that's going to say we want to use Python 3.7, and then we have our steps. So our first step is going to confirm that we're using the Python version 3.7. We're going to run a script here that's going to install the requirements. So those requirements are going to be for MySQL connector because we need to ensure that that package or library is installed on Ubuntu when it's running this code. And then finally, we're going to be running the Python script. So it's going to be a file path. The working directory is going to be SQL test. And then the script path is going to be SQL test/test_SQL.py because this is where I saved my code and this is the name that I gave the script. Okay, so now I'm going to pass in some arguments here. The username right here, my MySQL password, the database name, and then the database cloud skills that I want to test against. So I'm going to go to my variables here and I'm going to add a new variable. I'm going to call this password. I'm going to ensure that the value is secret. I'm going to paste in that value here. I'm going to click OK, save, and now we're ready to run our script. So I'm going to click save and run, commit, and this is going to go ahead and create our new pipeline for us. So we have the job here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up that job. And as we can see, our pipeline is going to start. Let's go ahead and give it a few moments to finish. And as we can see, our pipeline has finished successfully. It used Python 3.7. It installed the dependencies for MySQL connector. And then it ran the SQL script. And as you can see, it did pop out all of the first names in my database on the users table. In this case, I only have one, and it's Mike. So with that, that's how you can test to ensure that a table, users, and whatever else you have in your database is successful using CI/CD.